Let me go to J.D. Hayworth again about this question. The Democrats are going into a quandary. I want you to take your Republican hat off for a split second here. Are they wrong to try to get Republicans? They got Specter, Snow, and Collins to pass it in the Senate. They got no help in the House. Are they wrong to keep thinking that that's the standard, that they should always try to be bipartisan? Or is it smart to use the guns you got, push it through, jam it past the Republicans, and live with the consequences? What's the smart move here?
You got a couple of different things going on. Quite frankly, you had a charm offensive by President Obama, and that's fine. Inviting guys in for the Super Bowl, going to visit the respective Republican conferences, that's, I think, smart politics. But when it comes right down to it, the old saying is, if you've got the votes, you've got the votes. And in terms of majorities on both houses, they've got them, so they're using them.
Chris, can I make one point?
I guess I'm asking a moot point here because it seems like the way the both parties read the rules now, they don't believe in majority rule in the Senate anymore. They don't even bother. They just give up if they don't get 3/5 the membership. What do you think, Harold? Congressman Ford, it seems like that you have to be bipartisan whether you want to be or not.
Bipartisanship is not a substitute for leadership. I think the country is interested in the president doing what the last president didn't do, which I think President Bush, to his fault many times, did not seek Democratic support in the most genuine of ways, as much as he may have wanted. This president's attempting to do this. I'd remind J.D. and I would remind all watching, the last time a Democratic president, Bill Clinton, passed an enormous budget that was controversial because of its tax increases and other spending cuts was back in '93. Not one Republican voted with that '93 budget. If I recall correctly, that was the beginning. However we want to debate it, it was the beginning or the start point of the largest peacetime expansion of our economy. I know we all hope, whether we voted for this package or not, for it or not, that that's what this package begins the process of in this country again. And if Eric Cantor and John Boehner want that, want to be on the opposite side of it, they have every right to be, but don't root against economic success.
Harold, we're not doing that. With all due respect, you might recall, if memory serves, 41 Democrats voted with those Republicans. They had legitimate concerns about the largest tax increase in American history. And what turned the corner, of course, was my election in a Republican majority in 1994, where we worked with President Clinton and balanced the budget and had tax cuts, and that led to the wave of prosperity. As for President Bush, remember how hard he worked on Bill number 1, education, leave no child behind? George Miller, Ted Kennedy, a variety of Democrats. He reached out actively,
including me,
to try and rewrite history. Yeah, so you were there too in the room. So the fact is that what we really ought to be looking for is non-partisanship. Not bipartisanship, but saying these are American priorities. We have some disagreements. Let's take a couple from column R and a couple from column D.
But in fairness, J.D., more than 30% of this bill was made up of tax cuts. There were things that this president conceded and negotiated, and for whatever reason, many of my former Republican colleagues decided not to vote along with him. They had every right to do that. There's a philosophical gamble that's been made here. And all I ask is that if you're on the other side of that ledger saying you were against this bill, don't root against the country. And I'm not suggesting you are, but in a lot of ways, you're rooting against the economy.
No, you're making a tragic mistake, confusing the welfare of the president with the overall welfare of the country. And speaking of welfare, when you take out all the welfare reforms, again, a bipartisan triumph for both the Clinton administration and the then Republican Congress, when you take that out of the way, when you redefine tax cuts as payments to people who don't pay taxes, I got to tell you, it's a legitimate philosophical difference. That's not
people
a tax
who
cut,
go
that's
to work
welfare.
every day deserve a tax cut. And that's a philosophical difference. I hope what President Obama pushed through the Congress works. I know you do as well. If it doesn't work, I hope they all have the ability and temerity to come back to the table and work on a package that will work. But I got to believe $800 billion almost finding its way to states and to education, to energy and health care is going to have a positive impact on this economy. And if it doesn't, J.D., you're right. All I ask is that my friends in the Congress, Republican, don't root against this president. Don't root against this economy, and don't root against this package.
Do you think the Congressional Budget Office was rooting against the president or the administration when they said it would not have the effects desired? There are legitimate philosophical differences. And please, let's not make the mistake right out of the gate of saying because we disagree, one side is hoping the worst for America. Look, everybody understands this is a tough job.
Would we be better off, JD, if we had 8 more years? Would we be better off if we had 8 more years like the 8 we just had?
I believe, although I've got my differences with John McCain, I believe he would have done a better job in some of the areas.
No. 8 more years of the policies we've had for the last 8 years.
8 more years.
The same policies we had. Well, the same policies that you guys had the last 8 years in Congress.
Jobs,
8 more years of that. Would that. No, the economic policies that led us to where we are right now. We should have 8 more years of that. We'd be better off. To where we got now.
We should have had, look, the tax cuts I fought for, that I worked on in the Ways and Means Committee.
No, I'm asking you a simple question.
That's part of the 8 years.
The Republicans have controlled the White House for 8 years. Would we be better off having 8 more years of that policy of the Republicans for 8 more years? Would we be better off?
Low taxes, strong national defense, and good economic growth? Yeah, I'll take that.
But no, that's not what we got. We have an economic catastrophe Chris, on our hands after the last 8 years.
You know, maybe
we have nobody buying anything. We have nobody selling houses. Nobody selling cars. Stock prices going through the floor.
If you want to get into the whereases
of
this, we can go back and take a look. No, I'll tell you what was bad. The sneak attack on our economy, the dress rehearsal that was the debacle of IndyBank when Chuck Schumer helped get that started, and the guy in the background, George Soros, manipulating all the currency. You want to keep that going? That's what's going on here. The fact is,
you mean the economic situation we faced right now is the result of none of the administration policies?
Go take a look at what Paul
JD, you can talk fast, but I don't know what you're talking about.
This is
Are
why
you
the
saying
country
that Bush economic policy isn't where we got today? I don't understand what you're talking about. George Soros, what are you talking about? You're not talking about the fiscal and monetary policy of this administration.
Go back and take a look at what Paul Kanjorski said on C-SPAN a couple of weeks ago about how the economy got in the mess it was in. I'll tell you this, on balance, 6 of the 8 years were strong years. Did we have a meltdown? You bet. Do I want to see a meltdown continue? No. No American wants to see that. But to have you set up a narrowly defined area where you can say, aha, I got you, and I really should be running for the Senate against Arlen Specter is a moot point, Chris. I'm trying to set up for the common. And maybe that's why Specter went for the package after all.
But, Chris, this is why Barack Obama
JD, I think it's a... let me go back to Harold Ford. It's a reasonable question.
This is why
when someone criticizes the president's policies today, to ask them would they prefer the policies of the last 8 years. I think that's a good question.
The country answered resoundingly no. They wanted a different course in November of 2008. As much as I like and respect JD as a friend, I'm like you, Chris. I'm puzzled as to what George Soros, or for that matter, Chuck Schumer, has to do with the challenges we find ourselves in today. The reality is this. We need more Republicans and Democrats, I might add, like Charlie Crist of Florida, who stood with the president in Florida not long ago saying, look, we want your help. We need some way to stimulate our economy, to slow this housing debacle down and ensure we're able to create jobs here. Don't force us to raise taxes. Provide aid to the state and local governments. This bill does that. I take back, JD, everything I said about rooting against the economy. I know you're not. I say this, though. Don't allow your Republican friends in the Congress to find fault with this president because he's trying to deliver. Trying to deliver on what he campaigned on. That's all this president's doing, and if it works, the country will reward him. And President Obama himself said if it doesn't, he bears responsibility, just like President Bush must bear responsibility for the last 8 years of the inept leadership we've enjoyed.
Now we are out of time. Thank you, Harold Ford. Thank you, J.D. Hayworth. Gentlemen, thank you both. Coming up.